Former Minister for Education, Nora Amanya Mushega, deputized by the current Executive Director of the National Planning Authority, Dr. Joseph Muvawala, and other experts in this field. This team is going to review the education system of our country. We must recall that the last review was conducted in 1987. 35 years down the road, we've been moving on that, where in 1992, a team led by Professor, the late Senator Zakajubi, came up with the government white paper on education. Time has passed, and now here we are. Now, with me to discuss this is the spokesperson of the Ministry of Education and Sports, Dr. Dennis Mujimba. Doctor, once again, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much, Robert, for always inviting us.
It's a pleasure having you always.
You're welcome.
Because you know this is a sector where people must keep knowing what is happening. Doctor, to begin with, the biggest question here is, why now? 35 years down the road, when we had the white paper that was in 1992, why now? When even we've just seen you revise, that is the lower secondary curriculum.
That's a good question. Thank you, Robert. I think what the public is seeing, it is seeing a product or a fruit of something that has been in the making for some time. When the current Minister of Education and Sports, First Lady Janet Museveni, joined the sector in 2016, she found a lot of ripe ground for things to change and reposition the sector. However, at that time, there are things which she knew that were supposed to be done now, the immediate firefighting. Then there are those which she knew that, you know, these ones can take a longer time. So in the stabilization phase, you know, she had to first make sure we don't lose some projects which were struggling with implementing. I think you could have heard of the Global Partnership on Education project, which was supposed to give us over 200 renovated schools. But because of the challenges we are having as a ministry, we were able to only rescue about 145 schools. Now, that's one example. So there are other things she embarked on doing, and there were other pipeline initiatives that were in the sector. There was already a process for reviewing the TVET policy. The National Teacher Policy Development process was underway. The review of the lower secondary curriculum that you referred to was already underway. So there were lots of things already on the conveyor belt. So in her wisdom, she felt that in the midst of all those changes and challenges that were taking place, 2016 was not the right time to also now institute a commission to review the entire system. Then Cabinet guided the sector in 2016-2017 by posing a question to the sector, and they posed it to the minister, that what can be done to turn around the education system? That is the question that was posed to her. So from around 2017-2018, she engaged her technical people in the ministry to first of all review what had been done with the existing government white paper on education of 1992. And the findings were that we had performed on around up 42% of the recommendations that were there. And these were over 220 recommendations. But those that we had implemented were a total of about 40%. Now, the question is, why are some recommendations implemented? Why are others not implemented at all? So all that discussion was taking place. Now remember, this was within a space of around 2 years. Then now COVID hit. But in May 2021, that is when she actually launched the Education Policy Review Commission with very clear terms of reference of their scope of work and mandate. And initially she gave them 1 year. So our expectation was that by May 2022, they should have a report submitted and the government white paper proposed to her as well. So now we go to the second wave of COVID-19. Now, when the second wave came and the system was shut down in June, the commission had to find a way of doing business. They could not convene public hearings, so they reverted to things which they can do given the circumstances. And one of them was extensive literature review. We are not, what the minister has embarked on, she's not the first one who has ever embarked on reviewing the system. There are efforts that previous governments, even the pre-colonial governments, had ever undertaken to review the education system then for the colonial state. So this commission embarked on that extensive literature review, also looking at what other countries have been doing, what are the legal frameworks and other policy frameworks that affect the sector, both within the region, the continent, and the global stage. So there's a lot of mapping that has been taking place. Then when we sought guidance from our political leadership, we were told that, okay, once the economy has been fully reopened, then you can also prepare to go out for public hearings. So what was announced last week that the public hearings are going to begin is in tandem with the timeline that we were given by our political leader.
Well, we're talking about public hearing, but what are some of these areas that are going to be looked at? Because even when you look at the St. Kajubi report, that is the government white paper on education 1992, you've rightly put it very clear that only 42% was achieved. I've been able to speak to a number of experts in the field of education, education analysts, if I may use that, one of them being Fajil Mande, among others. And they've always alluded to the fact that even what was in that report, little but good, you've given us a 40%, which is still below average in terms of performance. Little. So what are some of these critical areas that you're going to be focusing on? Because one would say this had outlined a number of issues to be addressed in this sector.
Thank you so much. We are going, what I think has been coming out in the media, I think a lot has focused on, curriculum, etc. Now that is just part of the different systems that are going to be looked at. But ultimately, this commission is going to try and diagnose the problem. What is ailing our education system? What is ailing the sector? Now, after diagnosing the problem very, very well, to the best they can, then they will prescribe the solutions. Now, those solutions are what will be captured in the white paper in terms of recommendations. They are looking at the structure. Is the structure setup of the education system the best in delivering what we want to deliver as a solution to the problem ailing? And part of the problem that they are also going to clarify or define, in case it isn't clear, is what kind of system do we want? And in terms of education as a service, it has to be led by a philosophy. What should be the philosophy of our system? Now, you've defined that. What should be the objectives? If a child goes through our system and they become an adult, what do you expect that person to be behaving as? The outcomes. What is the desirable impact? But now all this will have to be seen in tandem with the bigger picture that the country has for socio-economic transformation. Education should be a catalyst. How should we position ourselves better? Now, there is a lot that is also changing in the regional context. If you talk of the ESC integration, you're talking of the continental stage. You also what are the global trends? So a lot has changed between 92 and now. So you're looking at the structure. How will delivery of education services fit within a given structure? You also have to look at the financing. What is the best way to finance the system? Now, who are the other players? There is a lot that we talk about, the state and non-state actors. Yes, so what will be the role of the non-state actors? How should they play their part? What is the role of the parent? Yes, education is a shared responsibility, but I think during this phase of the COVID pandemic, one of the things that has glaringly come out is that there are some responsibilities of the parent that have been either neglected or thought that the state would take over. But I think we now need to focus on what is that only the parent should do, and what is that only government can do, and what is that the parent can enable government to do, and what is that government can enable the parent to do to fulfill his or her role. So that has to be clearly defined. Then you now also have in the whole issue of what should be the learning outcomes at each of the levels. If you're completing a certain level of the system, what is it that we should expect from you? What should you be able to do?
Not just moving through
Not
itinerary.
exactly. It is not just coming through the system.
You've compared primary 7.
Yes.
So what can you do at that
What are
level?
the competences you're supposed to exhibit? Now, let me give you another example of a suggestion that came from one of the stakeholders. They brought to the attention of the minister that we need to introduce foreign languages, teaching of foreign languages in our system, if we are going to position our country as an investment destination, but also reach out to the markets that are within, especially the continent. And this group, I think it is the Uganda Manufacturers Association, their argument was that if we do not expose our young people to learning of foreign languages, which can only be done through the education system, we are putting them at a disadvantage. So, now, depending on how you look at it.
Because one would say China is one of the giants. Which foreign language do they speak?
Exactly. Now, but China is also investing a lot in teaching of English. You actually have so many Ugandans who have been, exported themselves to China as English teachers, because English is a language of business. Now, in Africa, I think the Uganda Manufacturers Association was looking at French and Arabic to target the northern and West African markets. Now, in other countries, because everything you're given, you have to benchmark. We realize some countries, especially the United Kingdom, I think around 3 or 4 years ago, they carried out what is called the languages of the future for their system. And they prioritize about 4 or 5 languages, which they said, we need to make sure that we have these within our education system to expose our young people to those business opportunities. So that is a strategic intervention. But now such a discussion is not something as a sector, as a ministry, we can sit and decide in a week. We have also to study it further so that you're not solving a problem today while creating another one tomorrow.
As you're reducing the syllabi at such a time, condensing it to pick what is most relevant, then you don't add irrelevance into this. Dr. Dennis, this brings me to another question. How is this going to be done? Because I'm reliably informed, though I stand to be collected, that you have a period of just 1 month for public consultation. And when I look at some of the areas here to be looked in, that is investigate government's implementation of the 1992 Education White Paper. That is one of the areas. Investigate the curriculum development as well as assessment of all levels of learning. I'm looking at a Chirabo, someone coming to me. I may not even have anything to know. I could, because I'm a journalist. Yes, I had to reading, but I'm ordinary Ugandan. If you come to them, white paper, they might even ask, what the hell are you asking me about? Then also look at, inquire into the relevancy and effectiveness of laws and policies that have been, enacted to guide the education sector. So when they come to you, fellow Ugandan, you should, I think, have an hint on this. Also inquire into the adequacy of the education sector funding, and to me, I think this is a very, very good point. Education funding in our country. And the most interesting to me, which also COVID proved, is one of the areas as a country have to move forward to, that is the need and readiness to adopt to open and distance learning, including the use of e-learning and methodologies. So how is this going to be carried out?
So the way we are going to engage with the public is, first of all, creating awareness about the existence of this commission and opportunity, like just the opportunity you've given the commission right now. Now, the second one is through written memoranda. You put down your thoughts and submit them to the commission through an email address that we have made public, EPRC, standing for Education Policy Review Commission, eprc@education.go.ug. You also have eprc2021.go.ug@gmail.com. Those are email addresses where you can submit your views, your comments, your opinion, your proposals. On whatever thoughts you have, you don't necessarily need to be an expert or a researcher to make a suggestion. If you even have a grandparent or someone whom you know they are not fluent in English, they can give you their suggestion in the language they best know how to, and then you submit it on their behalf using those channels. The other opportunity we are going to use is seminars and workshops. We shall have a time and move around different regions of the country, engaging with different stakeholders. We have also organized in such a way that when you're hosting a program, you could host another program on education. If you notify us ahead of time as a commission that I will be discussing this topic regarding your work, then we can listen in and take down the ideas that are coming out of the debate without us necessarily having to come into the studio. That is another opportunity. Now, all this, we know we are time constrained in terms of engagement. We have only 1 month, and we shall monitor the kind of feedback and engagement during this 1 month. If we feel that the level of interest is so intense that we need more time, then we shall bring that proposal to the appointing authority, and then the minister will definitely make a decision on whether the time we have is sufficient or not. But it is very important, Robert, that Ugandans get involved in speaking into what system they want. It is one issue for us to lament about what is wrong. But let us go a level higher by now proposing the solutions to the problems we have identified. 2 heads are better than 1. This is not a matter, education is not a matter for the education experts alone. We want the business sector, the private sector to come in. We want the cultural leaders to give their opinions. We want parents to give their opinions. We want students to give their opinions. Everyone that has a stake in learning, because you are part of the whole learning ecosystem, because you benefit from the products of the education system, but you also service the education system in various ways. So all of us need to make input, whichever way you want to. Let it be, and you can just send, the time we spend on WhatsApp is a lot. Just send an email and say 1 paragraph, say for me I want to see this and that. That is good enough. It is better than silence. But let every Ugandan who is able to get involved and have your say in what you want the education system to be like. And we are not only planning for today or next week, we are planning for the next 10 to 20 years. That is the system we are designing. We are not talking about a system for next year. No, next year is too soon. We are looking at that is going to prepare the child who is in P3 now. Those who are in university right now, it may be a bit late to be beneficiaries of these proposals. But those who are in O-level, those who are in primary school, those are in kindergarten, those are the people we are targeting to be the beneficiaries. So it is not a quick fix, and we really want to do something as a sector that we really want to be proud of and say, this is what we want as Ugandans to take us through the journey of socio-economic transformation as a service sector.
Well, this time around, I'm very excited because when I was reading more regarding our education sector, most of the changes we had, the syllabi to one level, it was more exported. We had most of, that is the United Nations something education commission, UNESCO, do so much. Now this is something that Ugandans are coming up with what is tailor-made. Ugandan-made, our desires, our thoughts on what the future of our education should be, our system, is what Ministry of Education and Sports is looking at. So Ugandans, we are good at identifying weaknesses here and there. This is your opportunity as a responsible citizen to give your thoughts towards how best this education system would be. If I were asked, and I now give my thoughts on that, and one of the areas would be how we assess people at various levels. That is my very big concern. And of course, government also to look into pre-primary, because you don't have pre-primary schools as government. These days, this is also another institution. You're almost paying university fees at that level. So many children maybe may not be lucky to go for pre-primary, which is also very important in one way or the other, despite your act saying that a child who has 6 years qualifies to go to P1, even if they have not stepped in any pre-primary. I find that also a bit, now that I have the opportunity, that I'll give in my views regarding that. So I don't know what your views are going to be. But also here in this program, you can be part of this show by simply going to our social media platforms on our WhatsApp number, which is on your screen, 070-960-2592. You can equally send an SMS, and I can assure you that view will go direct to the Education Review Commission that was set up to ensure we look ahead 20, 30 years from now. What do we want our education system to be? So that is, I'll be reading your views and your opinions on this. But Doctor,
yes, please.
Let's look at implementation. You know, our government is good at setting up commissions. Here, commission of inquiry, here, that. Reports are good at being made, and I don't know how many are there if you're to go to a number of offices. But you always have issues of implementation. Ugandans are now all hopes high, believing in this. What assurance do we have this time around?
Thank you. That concern is very legitimate. As we reviewed our performance on the Senteza Kajibi report and subsequent white paper on education of 1992, as you rightly heard, only 40% of the recommendations were acted upon. The question that this, and I've been privileged to sit in some of the discussions the Commission has been having, they want to ask the question, why are recommendations approved but not implemented? And now, so that these recommendations they are going to come up with in the White Paper 2022 do not fall victim to the same system of not implementing this. They also observed, even from the pre-colonial government, that there are certain recommendations that have always been approved by the state then, but they were never implemented. And some of them have been recurrent over time, handled or passed on by different executives. So defining the why of recommendations not being implemented is going to be a very critical thing. Now, one of the issues that has been emerging is that we come up with very nice to-do list, but we do not position it well with our reality of feasibility. There are many things that are desirable, but at the end of the day, what you do in your home is what you can afford. We can be desiring that early childhood should be available, early childhood education should be available for all children who are of age. Now, the question is, can the state afford it? This issue, by the way, came up around 3-4 years ago. I think it was in the NDP2. The NDP2 had proposed that government should implement universal early childhood education. But the minister, in her wisdom and with consultations, guided that let us first stabilize what government has already started with universal primary education. Let us also stabilize universal secondary education. What does stabilization mean? It means if you said that you want people, the population, to access services, have you provided those services? And government has made some progress in providing those access points. In terms of primary school, clearly coming up with a definition that access for primary education will be defined at parish level. Now, when you say that you want a primary school that is public, available in every parish, you're defining access at that point. For secondary education level, you're saying that it should be at a sub-county level. And we've made progress on that. And very soon, this year, I think within about this space of 2 months, we'll be commissioning about 70 new secondary schools. Not renovated, brand new secondary schools that are purely government owned. Not even government aided, but government owned. So we are making some progress on access. So when you go again to the issue of quality, you're looking at the issues of teachers. So the issue is, when you set yourself a goal, what is the feasibility of attaining that goal within the timelines you've given yourself? So when the minister looked at the proposal, and with consultation, she guided you people, let us not take on universal early childhood education. We were estimating that alone was going to cost about 2 trillion shillings to set up facilities. 2 trillion, that is almost 2/3 of the current education budget. So I think some of the, from past, some of the recommendations we've been coming up with are really good, but they are, you can categorize them as desirables, but they are not feasible. Now, you also look at what we want to do with higher education. The president has clearly spelled out his vision for higher education in his philosophy. One, in terms of access, he has guided that, you remember the traditional regions, or you can call them sub-regions. You know, you have the Bukedi, West Nile, Nkore, Uganda, Mengo. There are around, I think, 18 of them. And his vision in terms of access is that each of those regions should have one public university. And we have made progress on that. Recently, we've just completed signing MOUs for government to take on Mountains of the Moon University for the Rwenzori region, and then you also have Busoga University for the Busoga region. Now, we are trying to answer the question of access. Now, in terms of quality, His Excellency has guided that let us focus, let us position our public universities to be strong in sciences and technology, the STEM area. Because one, they are very expensive, and the public cannot afford them in private universities. So when you look at the recommendations that come up, we need to see, okay, some things are very good, but what is good may not be affordable for you. And that is the decision that the
let me
Commission
also
will have
now
to
look at
recommend.
a number of messages that are coming in, Doctor. Thank you so much, our viewers, and we appreciate your feedback. Please keep the messages coming in. Well, now opinions to the committee and recommendations. My opinion is nursery, 1 year. That's instead of baby, middle, and top class. Then he says primary, 5 years. And we have O-level, 5 years. No A-level. That is an adeke. And still I have another one. That is Dr. Mujimba. This is Omugaru Julius Patrick. He says, how prepared is the ministry to promote ECD curriculum and teacher education for all children with disabilities? How have you prepared for teachers in SNE and adjacent and the adjust curriculum? Thank you so much. Well, some more abbreviations, but I know, Doctor, these you understand better. Still coming in, good morning, Dr. Dennis. I'm a retired infant teacher. I beg to bring back, let me just get this. He says, I'm a retired infant teacher. I beg to bring back NOEC in language, because it caters for rural children to compete with urban children. Thank you. but I need to get his name. We're still looking at the opinions coming in. I thank the spokesperson, and I believe that if we put what he is saying, then we will have a new graduate who can help Africa integrate and liberate herself from dependency and identify the best conflicts there. I have researched for 20 years and spent 15 years writing my book, Nurturing a Competent African Child. It provides everything the ministry needs, and this is a Peace Ambassador. That is Kambura Milton. Thank you for your message as well. Another one says, I'm Jomani Abubakar, a secondary teacher. Puts a view forwarded to Dr. That this is Dr. Dennis Mujimba, not Dr. Kazimba, that agriculture should be made compulsory right from all levels because our economy depends on agriculture purely. But the ministry has always neglected agriculture, double main subject, by making it optional. Yet it is the most important subject as far as our country is concerned. A number are coming in, but these are views. So allow me to read people's views. Why is that in our education you are teaching many subjects? So this one is looking at the number of subjects, but please give us your name. That will do us good. I am Jomani. Okay, well, let's give us another person a chance. This one says, I thank the spokesperson. I believe that okay, he's also saying if people contribute to a large extent. Then, thanks for the program, George from Mbale. Recently, new curriculum was launched for lower secondary. Is that part of the review? George wants to know. Then, good morning, UBC. I'm Asimwe Bruce from Kabale, a teacher of English language and literature in English. Well, that is his concern. My concern is about the way of assessment, where they say no learner should fail, yet we all learn from failure too. It encourages less improvement, where most of the times in universal primary education, there is no repeating. So what are we teaching? I think that is one of the things he's looking at as a teacher. For now, let's first take some of the views, and of course, Doctor, you can respond to some of them.
Thank you so much, and our listeners, viewers, for our engagement. Let's begin with the last one on what Bruce said on assessment. One of the things that the minister clearly pulled out for us, First Lady said that we are having so many learners enter, but we cannot account for them where they are. And she's always been asking, but where are they?
Even when every time we have our final exams being
Exactly.
released.
She's been posing that question.
Dropout rate is...
Exactly. She's been posing the question that, okay, there are some who drop out when they're still in the system. But then those who even complete P7, we know that all of them have not moved to Senior 1. But where are those that have not moved to Senior 1? Now, there is what the Commission is looking at, the issue of exclusion. Are there some inherent barriers within the education system that are bringing about exclusion? And one of the areas people have pointed out is assessment. Assessment where Mr. Chirabo's daughter is sitting exams from the day of reporting on term. By the time you finish the term, your daughter has sat about 15 exams. End of week, end of month, mock, pre-mocks, as in it is just testing. You know.
You just remind me when we were in school, we had every weekend was exams.
Exactly. And it is now a business.
And they would tell you these accounts, so they would call them weekly, they account for 15, then there's those percentage for you to get 100. So you mustn't miss
So you're ending up having learners spending time being tested, but not learning. And yet at the end of the day, when you're giving them end of cycle exams or PLE, you're testing them on what they have learned. But you've spent all the time, all the year, testing them, not learning. So is the assessment system we are having currently an exclusion? It is the one, perhaps it is the one bringing out exclusion. So all these are issues that are going to be interrogated and say what is the way forward. Now George is asking about, is the lower secondary curriculum which has been reviewed part of the review process? No, it is not. This started earlier. Actually, the lower secondary curriculum, the process of reviewing it, started 10 years before it was launched in 2020. So even that curriculum alone, we shall realize that perhaps there are things we need to do better going forward. So then you go to Abubakar, is saying we should make agriculture compulsory. And now one of the areas that will be interrogated by the commission is, should sciences be made compulsory or not? Because some parents are saying, why should you make sciences compulsory, yet my son or daughter is not interested in sciences? So that is a debate that has to be settled. Then the issue of Milton brought about the issue of regional markets. And again, we've had those views come to the ministry about languages. We've had the Continental Free Trade Area, COFTA, that is coming on board. I can tell you, Robert, you'll not be able to penetrate some markets if you cannot communicate with official languages in those areas. Then you also have the infant teacher who says NOEC should be reinstated. I think she's bringing out the issue of education inequalities, in access, inequity, in access to opportunities. How can we reduce that one? And those are the areas that the commission will have to come up with solutions to. Then, of course, what Julius Omgalu talked about, teacher education for SNE. We are saying that education system should provide opportunities for all, including the learners with special needs education requirements. Now, that is when we are defining the problem. We need to find what is the current problem that the SNE learners are having with equitable access to education opportunities. And then the commission will be able to prescribe what they think are the best solutions to that. But they are not working alone. And that is why we are saying the public, you people, the experts who are there, make your submissions to the commission. Say, this is what I know, this is what I've learned from other countries. You benchmark and give the commission solutions.
Well, Dr. Time is not so much on our side. There are so many more views coming in. I'll briefly read through them. Then you shall just have your final remarks, maybe for you to capture them. We have here, my opinion is that nursery is only 1 year, primary 5 years, and secondary 5 years. No A-level. Okay, that is one done. Then we have, I am Samuel Oponye, vet instructor, encouraging the ministry, that is seniors 6 years primary, 4 years secondary, 2 years compulsory certificate course, 2 years or 3 years upgrade to diploma and bachelor's degree later. Make clear the salary scale with possible remuneration. Then industrial training and entrepreneurship should be heavily that is facilitated to about half of the staff pay to motivate learners. We have another one that is, let the thematic curriculum program for primary school be intensified to promote that is vernacular stroke local languages. We are losing our local languages because of English being taught even in baby schools. Well, there's so many recommendations, but what I'll do, I'll ensure I forward them to my guests in studios who will do the same to the committee. I want to thank you so much. Thank you so much. We have over 100 of these and we really appreciate your feedback. Doctor, let me just have your, in a minute, your final remarks.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Robert, and our viewers. Continue bringing your proposals, comments, forward them to Robert or the studio, even when we are not in studio. We can always receive them from the media house. We thank you and may you have a good week.
Once again, the emails?
The email for submitting your comments and proposals for reviewing the education system is eprc@education.go.ug. You can also send to eprc2021.go.ug@gmail.com.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Doctor, and of course an opportunity is here for you to be part of the change, the transformation in our education system by simply sending in your views to the Education Review Commission. Have a lovely day. Ruben is here to give you more regarding that is AFCON and of course the interesting topics there in the world of sports. Good morning.